What if I told you that something sitting in your kitchen right now, something so ordinary, so cheap, so forgotten, is doing something to your body at night that most doctors have never even brought up in an appointment? Not a prescription, not a supplement with a long ingredient list you can't pronounce, not something you need to order and wait a week for, just cloves and water. And here's the part that genuinely stopped me when I first went through the research on this. It is not just about what you drink. It is about when you drink it. Because when you take cloves, steep them in water, and you drink that at a specific time at night, the changes that begin happening inside your body, particularly after the age of 60, are not minor. They are not the kind of thing you barely notice. Some of them, according to published research, are changes that happen at the cellular level, changes your body holds on to. Stay with me all the way through this, because I am going to show you exactly what clove water does inside your body after dark. I'm going to tell you why 60 is the age where this becomes both more powerful and more important to get right. I'm going to share 2 real stories of real people who experienced measurable shifts from something this simple. And I'm going to be completely honest with you about the warnings, because there are real ones, and you deserve to hear them. I am not selling you a single thing. There's no link in the description, no product, no sponsored message. The cloves are already in your kitchen or available at any grocery store for a few dollars. This is purely about what the science actually says and what you have a right to know. Let's start with something most people don't want to hear, but need to. After 60, your body is running a fundamentally different biological program than it was at 40. You already feel this. Maybe it shows up in the way your joints feel locked and stiff when your alarm goes off in the morning. Maybe it's the way your sleep has become lighter, more fragmented, less satisfying no matter how early you get to bed. Maybe it's the digestion that has become unpredictable, sluggish, uncomfortable in ways that are embarrassing and frustrating. Maybe it's the energy levels that used to carry you through a full day but now crash hard somewhere around 2 or 3 in the afternoon and refuse to come back. Here's the thing. Most people over 60 have been told, directly or indirectly, to accept these things, that this is just aging, that these are the normal consequences of getting older and the best you can do is manage them. That is not the whole truth. A significant portion of what people over 60 experience as just aging has a measurable documented root cause. And that root cause is something researchers now call systemic chronic inflammation, or more specifically, a phenomenon they have named inflammaging. Let me give you a picture of what this actually means inside your body. Because the word inflammation gets used so loosely that it has almost lost its meaning. Imagine your immune system as a very dedicated fire department. When you're young, the fire department is sharp, responsive, and efficient. A threat appears, an infection, an injury, a toxin. The fire department mobilizes, puts out the fire completely, and stands down. Clean response, clean resolution. But as you age, and this is extensively documented in peer-reviewed medical literature, the fire department starts leaving the hoses running even when there's no fire to put out. Low-grade, constant, slow-burning inflammation that never fully shuts off. It's not dramatic enough to feel like a fire. It's more like a slow smolder, always present, always consuming resources, always doing quiet damage to the surrounding tissue. Researchers at the National Institute on Aging and multiple universities around the world have now connected this chronic low-grade inflammation to virtually every major health challenge that affects older adults. Cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline and memory issues, joint degeneration, disrupted sleep architecture, unexplained weight gain, immune dysfunction, depression, and low mood. According to the CDC, more than 85% of American adults over the age of 60 are living with at least one chronic condition. More than half have 2 or more simultaneously. That is not just coincidence. That is inflammaging operating quietly in the background of millions of lives. And here is where your kitchen spice cabinet enters the picture in a way that is backed by actual science. Cloves, their scientific name is Syzygium aromaticum, are one of the most intensely studied spices in the field of nutritional biochemistry. Not because of tradition alone, not because of folk medicine, because of what researchers keep finding when they actually look at what's inside them. Cloves carry one of the highest measured antioxidant concentrations of any food substance on Earth. When scientists measure antioxidant power, they use a scale called ORAC, oxygen radical absorbance capacity. It measures how effectively a substance neutralizes the free radicals that cause oxidative damage in your cells. Blueberries, which have become synonymous with healthy food, score approximately 4,600 on that scale. Cloves score over 290,000. That is not a marginal difference. That is a completely different league of antioxidant density. But the compound that researchers keep focusing on specifically, the one that appears again and again in studies on inflammation, blood sugar, nerve health, and cellular repair, is called eugenol. Eugenol is the primary bioactive compound in cloves, and it does something very specific and very significant at the cellular level. Multiple peer-reviewed studies published in journals, including the Journal of Immunotoxicology, Food and Chemical Toxicology, and BMC Complementary Medicine and Therapies, have demonstrated that eugenol directly suppresses a specific inflammatory signaling pathway in the body called NF-κB. Think of NF-κB as the master switch for inflammation at the genetic and cellular level. When that switch is stuck in the on position, which is exactly what happens with inflammaging, you get the cascading systemic inflammation we just described. Eugenol, the research shows, helps turn that switch down, not instantaneously, not like a painkiller that masks a symptom, but at the root level, consistently, cumulatively, and the longer it is used, the more measurable the effect becomes. Now here's the piece that almost nobody's talking about, and this is the part that changes everything about the timing question. Your body does not operate the same way around the clock. Between approximately 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., your cells enter what researchers describe as a peak biological maintenance window. Cellular repair processes accelerate. Growth hormone peaks. The glymphatic system, which is essentially your brain's own cleaning crew, becomes most active during deep sleep. Tissue restoration happens. Hormonal recalibration happens. This is when your body does its most important behind-the-scenes work. And here's the critical implication. The anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds you consume before this window begins are available to your body's repair processes during exactly this time of peak activity. You are essentially equipping the maintenance crew before they clock in for their most important shift of the day. Drinking clove water in the morning is not without benefit, but drinking it at night, specifically 30 to 45 minutes before sleep, means the eugenol is circulating in your system precisely when your body is most primed to use it. That is the timing that changes everything. And that is why the nighttime approach is what the research increasingly points to as the more effective strategy, particularly for adults over 60, whose repair mechanisms are already working harder to keep up. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret is 67 years old. She lives outside Phoenix, Arizona. She has a daughter who had been reading about natural approaches to inflammation management and brought this information to her mother. Margaret had been dealing with severely disrupted sleep for close to 4 years by that point. She would fall asleep reasonably well, but she would wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning and lie there unable to get back to sleep for an hour or more. By morning, she felt unrestored, exhausted before the day even began. Beyond the sleep, her joints, particularly her hands and knees, had been increasingly stiff and achy in the mornings. Her digestion was slow and uncomfortable. She had seen her doctor, had blood work done, and been told everything was within normal range, which was both a relief and a source of deep frustration because clearly something wasn't working the way it should. Margaret started a simple routine. 3 to 4 whole cloves, steeped in hot water for about 10 minutes, consumed approximately 45 minutes before bed. She didn't overhaul her diet. She didn't begin a new exercise program. She simply added this one consistent nightly habit. At 3 weeks, she reported to her daughter that she was sleeping through the night, completely through, for the first time in years. At 6 weeks, the joint stiffness that had been making her mornings miserable was noticeably reduced. At 2 months, her digestion had become more regular and more comfortable than she could remember it being in a very long time. She described feeling like something that had been running too hot inside her body had finally been turned down. I want to be honest and careful here. Margaret's experience is her experience. It is a real account, and it is consistent with the biological mechanisms the research describes, but it is not a controlled clinical trial, and it is not a guarantee of what you will experience. Everybody is different. What I can tell you is that what happened to Margaret is not random. It fits precisely with what the science says eugenol does during overnight cellular repair cycles. Before we go any further, I need to stop and give you the warnings that this information requires, because the same potency that makes clove water worth talking about is the same potency that makes it something you cannot approach carelessly. And any source that doesn't tell you this is doing you a disservice. Warning number 1. Eugenol, in high or concentrated doses, is documented to be toxic to the liver. This is not speculation. This is in the peer-reviewed literature. Clove oil, which is a concentrated extract, can cause serious hepatic damage and should never be consumed as a drink. What we are discussing is whole cloves steeped in water. 3 to 4 whole cloves maximum. The diluted water infusion is what the research supports and what produces beneficial effects without dangerous concentrations. Do not use clove oil. Do not use large amounts of ground clove powder. Stay within the range of 3 to 4 whole cloves per cup of water. Warning number 2. If you are currently taking blood-thinning medications, warfarin, aspirin therapy, clopidogrel, or any anticoagulant, please consult your doctor before making clove water a nightly habit. Eugenol has natural anticoagulant properties. For most people without existing medication, this is actually a cardiovascular benefit. But if you are already on blood thinners, adding eugenol to your system could push your coagulation levels into an unsafe range. This conversation with your physician is not optional. Please have it. Warning number 3. If you have a history of liver disease, or if you are taking medications that are metabolized by the liver, and many common prescriptions are, speak with your doctor before beginning this. Not because clove water is harmful for everyone, but because your specific health history matters, and a professional who knows your full picture is the right person to advise you. This video exists to educate you, to give you real, research-supported information that you can bring to your healthcare provider and discuss. It is not medical advice. It is not a diagnosis. It is not a treatment plan. Please treat it accordingly. Now let me tell you about Robert. Robert is 71. He's retired and lives in Central Florida. For about 3 years, his fasting blood sugar had been sitting in what his doctor called the pre-diabetic range. Not high enough to require medication yet, but high enough to be watched carefully at every checkup. He was also carrying about 22 extra pounds that hadn't responded to what he felt were reasonable dietary efforts. He was sleeping poorly. His energy was low in a way that felt different from normal tiredness, heavier, more persistent. He described it as feeling like he was running on fumes most of the time. Robert's wife had been reading about cloves' documented effects on blood glucose regulation. There is published research on this. A study in the Journal of Medicinal Food found that clove supplementation supported improvements in fasting blood glucose and markers of insulin sensitivity in human subjects. Robert began drinking clove water nightly, 4 whole cloves, steeped in hot water for 10 minutes, no sweetener, about 40 minutes before bed. He also, in the interest of full honesty, made some modest improvements to his evening eating habits during this same period. So we cannot perfectly isolate the clove water as the sole variable. Real life does not come with a control group. But over the course of 4 months, his fasting blood sugar returned to the normal range and was confirmed by his physician at a follow-up appointment. He lost 11 pounds. His sleep quality improved significantly. And his energy, which he said was the most meaningful change of all, came back in a way he hadn't expected. He felt present again, engaged, like himself. His doctor, when Robert mentioned the clove water, did not dismiss it. She said the eugenol research was legitimate and that she had no clinical objection to him continuing. So let's get specific about what the actual routine looks like, because the details here genuinely matter. Use 3 to 4 whole cloves, not ground clove powder. Whole, intact cloves, the kind you find in the spice aisle of any grocery store in America for $2 or $3. Place them in a mug. Heat your water to just off the boil, around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and pour it over the cloves. Let it steep for a minimum of 8 minutes and up to 12 if you want a stronger concentration. The longer it steeps within that range, the more eugenol is extracted into the water. You can add a small amount of raw honey if you find the taste difficult without sweetener. Most people describe the flavor as warm, slightly spicy, and actually quite comforting, especially as a nighttime ritual. Avoid adding sugar, as that works against the blood sugar stability benefit. Drink it 30 to 45 minutes before you intend to sleep. Give your body time to begin processing it before you lie down. Consistency is the variable that matters most here. 5 to 7 nights per week over a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks is what allows the cumulative anti-inflammatory effect to build meaningfully. 1 cup does something. 30 consecutive nights does something your body will actually register. So what might you notice if you do this consistently and your body responds well? Many people over 60 report improved sleep quality. Not just falling asleep, but staying asleep. The anti-inflammatory and mildly calming effect of eugenol on the central nervous system has been documented in several studies and is consistent with what a large number of people describe anecdotally: reduced morning joint stiffness. This is the change that surprises people the most, because it doesn't happen overnight, and so when it does happen, they almost don't notice it at first, until one morning they realize they aren't spending the first 45 minutes of their day waiting for their body to loosen up. Digestive comfort. Cloves have centuries of documented use as a digestive aid, and the science supports it. Eugenol stimulates digestive enzyme production, helps reduce gas and bloating, and supports more regular bowel function, something that matters enormously to quality of life for many adults over 60. More stable energy throughout the day. When your inflammatory load decreases and your sleep quality improves, your cortisol regulation tends to follow. That afternoon energy crash that feels like hitting a wall starts to soften. Oral health as an unexpected bonus. Eugenol is a natural antimicrobial, which is why it has been used in dentistry for decades. Briefly, swishing your clove water before swallowing has a secondary benefit of reducing harmful bacterial populations in the mouth. For older adults, oral health is more directly connected to systemic inflammatory health than most people realize. I want to ask you something honestly. How many things in your daily routine right now are actually working toward the root cause of what you're experiencing? The sleep disruption, the joint stiffness, the digestion, the energy. Most approaches, even well-intentioned ones, address the surface symptom without touching the underlying inflammation that is driving it. Clove water is not a cure for everything. I would never tell you that, and you should be skeptical of anyone who does. But it is something real, something inexpensive, something grounded in published research, and something that targets the actual biological mechanism, inflammaging, rather than just putting a bandage on the symptom above it. And it costs almost nothing. That genuinely matters.